Here we are on the 8th of February, at least in Australia, it's already the 8th of February. And this is a quotation I love to use. It's from someone named Alvin Boyd Kuhn. And it just sets the stage for what I'm going to briefly try and talk about, probably more briefly now that I don't know how much time you guys have, but I'll go through, the whole thing and give you time for questions as much as you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Take your time. We've got as long as you need.
Right on. So this quotation, he's talking about Bible stories. As you can see, he lived from 1880 to 1963. But this could apply to all the myths. The myths are not a record of what happened to a man or a people as historical occurrence. They're not about historical events. They mean nothing as outward events, in fact, he says, but they mean everything as picturizations, dramatizations. They're picturing, like a movie does, that which is our experience at all times. Like I use the metaphor of the Karate Kid a lot. That's what the myths are. The myths are like Mr. Miyagi using wax on, wax off to teach Daniel-san something that Daniel could not have grasped otherwise.
Mm.
There, that movie, none of us is going to actually live through the exact experience of Daniel-san because we don't live in 1980s Los Angeles. Nobody can live in 1980s Los Angeles anymore. It's gone. But that movie still can speak to us about overcoming our doubts or whatever. So this is picturing what is our experience, just like a movie does. That's what the myths are doing. They're actually about you. The actors are not old kings, priests, and warriors. The one actor in every portrayal, in every scene, is the human soul. It's about you. It's about spiritual aspects of what's going on inside of you, but it's about your drama inside of you. Those gods and goddesses, they're inside of you. Those 12 disciples, one of them is doubting, one of them is aggressive, one of them is headstrong. You've got that inside of you. And one of them is Jesus. You've got that inside of you. The Bible, just the Buddha is a picture of higher self. Jesus is a picture of higher self.
Yeah.
Krishna is a picture of higher self. Athena is a picture of higher self. I'm not saying they're not real. Athena is also a goddess, maybe outside of us as well as inside of us. But anyway, the Bible is the drama of our history here and now. It is not apprehended in its full force. You don't grasp it in its full force and applicability until every reader discerns himself, or I put in herself, to be the central figure in it. You are the star of the myth. I would say you're actually all the characters. you have them all inside because we're multiple personalities. So this, now when I start talking about some myths, let's apply what he just said. So does anyone know what this scene is? Have you guys read a lot of Bible stories in Sunday school?
Not.
No.
What's going on in this picture? Can you see what's happening? We've got a king on the left seated in a throne. We've got two women, and then we've got this big burly swordsman with a big beard and long hair arching a sword over his back while holding what in one hand?
Baby.
A baby. Look at that baby. He's
There's another
arching
baby on
really
the ground
vigorously.
too.
And there's actually a dead baby on the ground. So this is called the Judgment of Solomon. You can see there's two pillars there. There's actually a few pillars, but
Yeah.
Solomon sits between two pillars. Solomon is renowned for being the what? The strongest, the most ferocious. What is Solomon's claim to fame? Do you know?
Don't know.
Well, he was the richest too, but mainly he's known for being the wisest king. He was
Okay.
given wisdom. So God asked him, Solomon, ask me for anything. That's a pattern we find in myth around the world. Hey, King Midas, ask me for anything. Oh, I think I want everything to turn to gold. Oh, wrong answer, Midas. Solomon was asked, what do you want? And he said, well, I'm a king and I've got to judge the people, but I feel like a little child. I feel overwhelmed. How am I supposed to judge all these different issues? I ask you for wisdom. And God said, that's the right answer. I like that answer. I will give you wisdom. And right after that, the Bible says, transitions to this story of two women, actually two harlots. The King James says two harlots, which is two prostitutes, two whores, two hookers come to the king. And they say, you know what, King, me and this other woman, we lived in the same basically apartment. We're prostitutes, and we both conceived at about the same time. And I had a baby, and then 3 days later, or 3 months later, no, 3 days later, she had a baby. 3 days later, so the babies are almost the same age, but there's a 3 day difference between them, and so they're about the same age. Well, this one, she overlaid her baby in the night. She rolled over on it, I think, and suffocated it. And it's dead. And then she switched babies with me. And so she gave me her dead baby, and now she has the live baby, and that's my baby, and I want it back. And the other prostitute says, no way, King. That's not true. This is my baby, the live one. She's the one with the dead baby. And the king says, oh my goodness. How am I going to resolve this? Everybody's looking. What's the king going to do? I don't know. Everyone says he's so wise. Let's see if he can figure this one out. And so he says, no, I've got an idea. Let's take the live baby, cut it in half, and give one half to each of you. Problem solved. Swordsman, cut that baby in half. And one woman says, oh, please, king, don't spare the baby. Please just give it to her. I don't care. Just don't cut that baby in half. And the other prostitute says, oh, no, I think that's a great idea. Cut it in half. And Solomon says, and here's, the painting. This is by a painter, a famous French painter, James Tissot, 1836 to 1902. This is the point. He's pointing. He says, stop. Don't cut the baby in half. I figured it out. Give it to the one who says, don't cut it in half. Don't give it to the one who says, cut it in half. Obviously, that's not the mother. And everybody says, Solomon's wisdom is unsurpassed. So it's a famous story. Now, it's probably not a literal story because it doesn't make sense for the one woman to say, cut it in half, because a minute ago she was asking for it, right? But maybe in her misery, she's like, yeah, two dead babies. Misery loves company. I'd rather her baby die too.
Yeah.
Like that's a picture of like how we can get taken over by, a part of our personality that we don't like. It's like, oh shit, did I say that? And later she's like, I really didn't want to kill the baby. But anyway, it's not a literal story. It's a celestial story. I'm going to show another painting. Oh, first of all, there's King Solomon, number one. I'll label them quickly for ease of reference. The two women, I put them 2A, 2B. So one woman's obviously pleading for the baby's life, and one woman's like, yeah, go ahead, cut him in half.
Yeah.
Then we got dead baby here and live baby here, just so all viewers can see that. And there's the swordsman. Now I want you to look at the baby is arching vigorously. If you guys have ever changed a baby's diaper, or given a baby a bath, when they're mad, they sometimes arch like this.
Right.
Very interesting that the paintings down through the centuries. Here's a different painter from much earlier, Peter Paul Rubens. This is the same scene. Now, can you see Solomon? He's up there. He's pointing. He's saying, stop, don't cut the baby in half.
Yeah.
Look at the swordsman. Swordsman, similar arch, he's holding his sword over his back like he's about to, I'm going to cut. And he's holding, what's the baby doing? Hard, vigorous arch again. And then we see the dead baby there. Now, one mother has her arm conspicuously out. The other mother kind of has two hands. In this case, she's holding like her dress, like a apron. Anyway, I'm just pointing out these artistic details down through the centuries, and we're going to go back even further. One more, Solomon here between two pillars. He's actually between two pillars on the Peter Paul Rubens. On the throne, there's two pillars kind of carved behind him. But this one is by a famous painter you may have heard of named Raphael. The Teenage Ninja Turtles have a Raphael. And Raphael, he lived back in 1400s and early 1500s. Same arching baby. See how the baby's arching? Same sword over shoulder, heel raised. And then we got one woman with kind of an arm out, gesturing down towards the baby, and one woman with kind of two hands. Now that woman, I just want to point out, that mother, she's walking one direction while looking back the other direction. These are celestial clues that I'm going to point out. So
Okay.
Can you see how there's like a pattern going on here?
Yeah.
artistic pattern. So now I'll bring in the stars of the heavens. Can you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start with the swordsman. So I'm throwing you guys in the deep end, but I just want to show the Bible is based on the stars. All these stories are based on the stars. They're esoteric. When you have two babies and two mothers, that's actually esoteric. Like Osiris of ancient Egypt
Mm.
has Isis and Nephthys. And Horus actually has two mothers, and the ancient Egyptian texts say something like Isis bore him, but Nephthys suckled him, nursed him. What's going on with two mothers? What's going on with two babies, one dead, one alive? What's going on with twins all throughout the myths? There's twins in myths everywhere around the world.
Right.
I argue that it's not two different people. The two mothers, you've got the blessing mother and the cursing mother inside of you. One mother is like, no, 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 save the baby. That's a blessing. Like, I want life. So the other mother's like, no, kill him. That's
Yeah, like the
cursing.
devil and the angel on your shoulder, that type
Yeah,
of.
yep,
Mm.
exactly. And the dead baby, the first birth is a physical birth. We're born into this physical body. Your physical body is going to die. That's like the dead baby. The second birth is the spiritual birth. That's what's going on here is they're telling us something very profound about us. But let me show you that it's celestial. First of all, let me show you it's a metaphor. I'm arguing it's a metaphor. Now I'm going to prove it's a metaphor, because if it's based on the stars, then it's a metaphor. This is the constellation that is commonly known as Hercules.
Yeah.
Hercules is a mythical figure, and he is based on this constellation. I can show that. Figures associated with this constellation usually have a big full beard, powerful weapon. You can see why. Look at this. The head of the constellation is square. Yeah. The weapon over powerful. See that lunging posture? It's very distinctive lunging posture. Why is when I was trying to figure this out, I said, why is the baby always arching? Because right next to Hercules, there's this constellation called the Northern Crown, Corona Borealis. Can you see that right there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can imagine a line going, Hercules isn't normally connected to the Northern Crown, but in myths and in ancient artwork, even going back to ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, there are Hercules figures who are like in that posture, and they're holding something that's arch-shaped. Like mm-hmm. Hercules himself will be grasping the arch-shaped crest on the opponent that he's about to kill. It's very distinctive. That is the baby. That's the arching baby.
Mm.
Are you with me?
Yeah.
Your viewers might be saying, well, this is a stretch. Are you kidding? I'm going to show you more evidence. But this figure of a powerful, dude picking up a baby, it is found in myths around the world. And you would not expect, it's unexpected. You wouldn't expect the Northern Crown to be envisioned as a baby. Sometimes it's envisioned as a necklace or a crown or all kinds of things in different myths. To see it as a baby is a pretty creative thing. Mm-hmm. And yet we find it over and over around the world. So there's some kind of connection going on here. Now I'll show you who Solomon is. Right here is a very important constellation called Ophiuchus. It means the serpent holder. See how it has a center pillar or a center obelisk, and then on either side the serpent?
Yeah.
You might not initially agree, but there's tons of evidence that Solomon is Ophiuchus, and Solomon is the one who builds the temple and sits between the pillars. And Ophiuchus has these two halves to it, but also the central figure kind of has the two pillars. Can you see that? That is actually related to the building of the temple. And I'll show you a little bit more evidence that Ophiuchus is Solomon in a minute. But just trust me for the time being, Solomon is Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is a figure that is often associated with higher self and with wisdom. And Solomon is associated with wisdom. Mm. Now I'm going to show the two mothers. The first mother is probably Virgo. See Virgo right there?
Oh, yeah.
Virgo, see her outstretched arm?
Yeah.
Virgo is actually the mother of like the first birth. Now the two babies in the story, they're born 3 days apart. as the sun is moving through the zodiac, it moves through Virgo, then it moves through Libra, then it moves through Scorpio. I've put those up here. Then it comes to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the archer. And actually, Sagittarius plays male figures and also female figures. All of the constellations do in the myths. Sometimes they're male, sometimes they're female. This is the second mother. 3 days later, it's actually 3 months later that the sun will get to Sagittarius, but that is the second birth. This has to do with the turning of the seasons, the equinox, the solstice. I saw that you had someone on talking about the origins of Christmas connected to the solstice. That is just, I'm not going to go into the whole system, but that's where the second birth happens. The spiritual birth is at the solstice. It's the turning point. And the sun's going through this turning point right down there. This is the lowest time in the northern hemisphere when the sun is the lowest, and then it turns back around and moves upward. So this is when the birth of the higher self happens, the second birth, the live baby. See, the first birth, the Virgo birth, is the plunge down into this body. Anyway, this is all esoteric. It's a system, and it's talking about not just, oh, I have a soul, it's talking about you actually have a self, a higher self, a wise self. You've got a source of wisdom, but it's been suppressed and buried, and that's what and you've got to get back in touch with it. And the reason it's been buried is because of trauma in this world, and it just happens. And but you can get back in touch with it. It's talking about our conditions. So there's actually a second crown right next to Sagittarius. It's almost like down on the floor next to her. That's the southern crown. I had to put the words down there to fit, but can you see the southern crown?
Yeah.
That's the dead baby. But the dead baby has been put next to the second birth mother. See, because they've been switched. And the live baby is being lifted up by Hercules and is about to get cut in half. And then the king says, stop. I was only kidding. Don't cut that baby in half. I just had to figure out who was the right mother. And now, he's so wise. So can you see how this scene, it may not be immediately obvious, but when you look at enough myths, I'm going to show you another celestial figure. This is someone slaying a giant and then cutting off his head. Do you know who it is? It's also Bible. I'm named after him. David and Goliath.
Oh, David and Goliath.
Goliath, he actually takes the sword of Goliath, the giant sword, and cuts off Goliath's head.
Now, the story,
can you see David is standing on Goliath? He's like got one foot on Goliath, but this is also Peter Paul Rubens, the same painter that we saw in that earlier Solomon one that I took away. Can you see the posture of David there?
Yeah.
Look back at the stars. Can you see any constellations that look like they're in that posture? Sword overhead, deep knee bend.
Pretty much exactly right.
Yeah.
It's pretty much exactly Hercules. And can you see that he's got his foot on Goliath's temple there? You see right there?
Yeah, exactly.
Goliath is the giant Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is Goliath in this case. And David, that's why David has to cut off his head. Now, if you know the Bible, you know David is also a musician. I think everybody should play music. I've now decided that music is essential. We should all, it's not too late, no matter how old you are, spend some time every day playing music. David's musical instrument was any guesses? It's on a bottle of Guinness. It's celestial. The harp. Here's a picture of David playing the harp. Can you see that he's in that? The painter, this is a painter who died in 1724. I didn't put his dates up because I don't know when he was born. Nobody knows when he was born, but his name was Giacomo del Po, the river Po in Italy. But can you see how this painter has also put his legs almost in the same Hercules posture again? But he's playing the harp. Now, right next to Hercules on the other side from the northern crown is David's harp. That's Lyra, the lyre. So David plays a lyre or a harp. Hermes or Mercury in ancient Greece invented the harp. It's the reason David plays the harp is David is associated with Hercules. He plays the lyre. He slays Goliath. And Solomon do you know the relationship between David and Solomon by any chance?
No.
Solomon is the son of David. David is the son of Solomon. Solomon is the son of David. 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 One
No.
is the father of the other. David is the father of Solomon. So
Right.
Solomon, remember which constellation I said Solomon is? Also Ophiuchus. He's
Mhm.
Ophiuchus. Solomon is descended from David, i.e., David's Solomon's father. Can
Yeah.
you see how if Ophiuchus is Solomon, he's descended from David? Like he's directly below
Mm.
Hercules. So this happens in the myths a lot where a figure will be descended from another constellation. Or does that make sense what I just said?
Yeah.
It's another clue that what I said about Solomon being Ophiuchus is true. Anyway, I'm showing you this using some biblical stories. There's other Bible stories. There's one where David is up on the roof and he sees a beautiful maiden. He looks down in his garden at night and sees a beautiful Bathsheba. He's standing on the roof. Now, if I told you that David was Hercules, can you see why he's standing on a roof? Look at Ophiuchus.
Yeah, because it's triangle.
Yeah, it looks like a house. Like when a kid
Yeah.
draws a house, they draw a rectangle and then they put a little triangle on top.
Yeah.
David is up on the roof. You see? This
Yeah.
is, and he looks down and sees a beautiful maiden. He's either looking down and seeing Virgo or Sagittarius. I vote for Sagittarius because she's right next to the Milky Way. That's where she's taking a bath. And she's usually she's often a very beautiful maiden, Sagittarius. She's down on the left. She's a bit covered up there. She's not always a female figure. I'm going to show you a myth where she's a male figure. So now this is a worldwide system. I'll take away the Bible pictures and see if you're familiar with this figure. This is a figure. If I showed some Bollywood movies of this figure, he has a big mustache, got big burly arms, carries a big club, and he's in this posture. I'm going to outline. This is from a temple in Halabid, I think it's pronounced, the Hoysaleshwar temple. It's an amazing temple. People can't figure out how this temple was made. It looks like it was, using advanced machining techniques, but it was built in the 1100s. It's a mysterious temple, has these incredible carvings. But I want to call attention to this figure right here. He's fighting a bunch of elephants. This is a figure who fights in the Mahabharata, Duryodhan. Do you know Duryodhan?
No.
Okay. You can look up online. There's YouTube videos of Mahabharata. There's tons of kind of like in the 50s, there were a lot of movies about Jason and the Argonauts and Hercules out of Hollywood. Well,
Yeah.
there's also lots of movies about Mahabharata, the Pandava brothers. There's these 5 heroic brothers, and one of them is super strong like Hercules. And he's in this posture. Can you see the posture?
Yeah.
And look at Hercules.
Mm.
Can you see that's exactly Hercules?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I saw. Yeah.
There's a hero whose name is Beam. There's 5 Pandava brothers. There's the oldest brother, Yudhisthira, who's the wisest, and he gets to be the kind of the king. Then there's Beam, he's super strong.
Yeah.
And then there's Arjun. Have you heard of Arjun or Arjuna? He has a bow. Anyway, and then there's 2 twins, Nakula and Sahadev. And so there's 5 heroic brothers. And then they go through all these adventures. Well, Beam has a mace and he is in this posture and he fights Duryodhan and then he kills a bunch of elephants. That's what's being depicted here. Duryodhan is like the bad guy. And you can see it's Hercules posture, hopefully.
Yeah.
Really Hercules posture. And here's another, this is actually called the Beam Gate or the Bhima Gate. This is from the 1500s. It's also Beam. Look at the posture.
Yeah, the knees exactly like Hercules.
Yeah, and the mace, that's like a mace that he's carrying. It looks like kind of like a torch, but that's Beam. And he's even got actually a sash that sticks out behind his butt there that points to the star Vega in Lyra. You see that in Hercules has usually the tail of like his leopard skin or his lion skin.
Yeah.
The other clue here is if you look at the picture of Beam on the Bhima Gate there, he's holding a mace in one hand. Can you see what he's holding in his other hand? Right there. He's plucked a lotus flower. a
Oh.
lotus flower.
Mm.
Now, why would a Hercules figure pluck a lotus flower? Look over here. Can you see Ophiuchus? You see the serpent
Mm.
half of Ophiuchus? You see
Yeah.
that the serpent half that usually is seen as the serpent head. Can you see how that could be a lotus growing out of Ophiuchus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hercules is reaching down to pluck it.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So the Pandava brothers, there's five of them. Beam is the strongest. Yudhisthira is the wisest, so he's Ophiuchus, I argue. And also Yudhishthira's weapon is a spear. And Ophiuchus figures usually have a spear because of those two serpent halves. You could draw a line through them that's more straight and it would look like a spear. So Ophiuchus is Yudhisthira in the Mahabharata, and Arjun, who's kind of the most famous of the five Pandava brothers, he's the best at weapons. Like he's not the strongest. Beam picks up trees sometimes and uses them as a club. Arjun goes up to the gods and gets all these celestial weapons, including a bow that's so powerful. And he does this. He does a he does a famous bow trick, just like Odysseus does in the Odyssey, where he shoots a bow through the eye of a fish on a spinning disc to win. All these five brothers have one wife whose name is Drupadi. She's the most beautiful princess. Five brothers, one wife. In the Bible stories, Jesus comes across a woman who has five husbands. So this is like a universal pattern. These are connections. I'm not saying that they both got it from each other. I think they came from some very ancient civilization. But this
Yeah.
is a picture of Arjun. You can see his weapon is, or his primary weapon is a bow. Can you see it
Yeah.
in the picture?
Mhm.
Here's another one. Arjun is in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking to Arjun. Before the great battle in Mahabharata of Kurukshetra, the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjun, who's the most weapon proficient, he's got all the weapons he needs to do this battle, is filled with doubts. And he gets out of the chariot, sits down in the dust and says, I don't think I can go through with it. And Krishna, who's his charioteer, the divine charioteer, says, Arjun, let me tell you the Bhagavad Gita. That's the Bhagavad Gita is the song of Krishna speaking to Arjun. He says, you have to do what's right without attachment. Arjun is sitting down in the dust. Krishna is actually associated with Ophiuchus as well, the wisdom, the higher self. Arjun has gotten down in the dust outside of the chariot and he's carrying his bow. Can you see he's on the left in that little picture? He's got the
Yeah.
bow and Krishna is in the front. He's the charioteer. So who's got a bow? That's Sagittarius. So Arjun is Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, sometimes male figures, sometimes female figures. Like the goddess Artemis, she carries a bow. She's Sagittarius, but her twin brother Apollo, who also carries a bow, he's also Sagittarius, I believe. Anyway, I'm just showing that this is around the world. And in fact, the chariot, Ophiuchus, all their chariots, you see how the war carts in the ancient Indian epics have these little umbrellas on top of them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
little canopy? That's Ophiuchus. See, Ophiuchus has a like little triangular roof.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Is actually hooked up to, if you follow what I've labeled Lotus, right in front of Lotus, there's a sitting figure. That's like the charioteer who's pulling the chariot. So Ophiuchus could be a chariot that's being pulled by the horses of the Big Dipper, the four horses that are hitched up in the front, the white horses. I'm not expecting everyone to see this all at once, but the evidence is actually overwhelming that this is going on. Let me see if I have any other pictures. Oh yeah, Krishna. So Krishna is talking to Arjun. Ophiuchus is both the chariot and Krishna. So Krishna, there's a very famous story where Krishna dances on the head of the Kaliya Nag. It's called the Nagas are these serpent deities that live in the water. Well, I am quite confident that they are associated with Scorpio. So look down at Scorpio in the stars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Scorpio's halfway in the Milky Way.
Yeah.
He's like a serpent that lives in the river. And Scorpio actually has multiple heads, or it looks like it has multiple heads.
Yeah.
Like Hercules fights the Hydra, which has 9 heads. So often Krishna will be dancing on a Kaliya Nag that has multiple heads. In this particular painting, there's only one head, but I like it because he's holding his flute. You see the flute? Can you see it? I don't know if we're in the way on my.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it on mine. Yeah. I've moved us
Are we
out.
in the way, or can you see it? Let me.
Yeah, I moved us out of the way on mine.
Oh yeah, okay. So hopefully on your end where it's recording, we're out of the way, right?
Yeah, you will be.
Good, good, good. So you can see how Krishna, see how he's holding a flute out to one side and he's standing on a serpent, sometimes a multi-headed serpent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now look at Ophiuchus standing on top of Scorpio.
yeah.
Mm.
Can you see, do you see a flute off to one side
Yeah.
anywhere?
On the left. Yeah.
That's like Krishna is, well, he's actually an avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu is also Ophiuchus. Vishnu has a lotus growing out of his belly button, out of his navel. And when he's dreaming the universe into existence, Vishnu is actually reclining on the back of a different serpent, Sheshanag, with a lotus coming out of his belly button. So Vishnu is also Ophiuchus, and the lotus is coming out of his belly button, and he's reclining on the back of Scorpio. But in this case, Krishna, who's an avatar of Vishnu, is also Ophiuchus, and he's dancing on the head of the multi-headed Scorpio. See that?
Mm.
Yeah.
Is this convincing, or is this like, no, this is too much?
No,
Too much
this
of a
is
stretch.
with the Hindu gods in particular and the stories of the Hindu gods. I think it you've linked it, but I think going from the Hercules side and the biblical times stories to then linking it to this gives it like ultimate sort of connections.
Yeah, I think it's just too similar to the pictures to it not for it not to be based on the stars. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the artwork, the ancient, we could go to ancient Egypt. We could go to ancient Mesopotamia, and the same pattern can be found in the artwork. Now, some people might complain and say, oh, well, that doesn't prove anything. It's just the artists. But we can actually, the Bible didn't come full of pictures. We can actually use the text as well. Like in the Bible, it says, he will step on the head of the serpent, but the serpent will bite his heel. Well, we can see that's talking about Ophiuchus and Scorpio.
Yes.
It's just not as visual. I could have just put up a bunch of texts on here and shown you the connections, but that's just not as satisfying. So I agree. The artwork really nails it.
It's like just the small things that make it more convincing, like the way the knees are bent on Hercules and Bhima.
Yeah.
The flute pointing left, and the flute also pointing left in the artwork.
Yeah. Oh, I've got another one where the flute is pointing left. I found, let me see. Oh, yeah. The Scorpio, that's how you spell the name of the Kaliya Nag. So I put Kaliya down there next to Scorpio. Let me show one other picture. This one's a little more modern, I think. I don't know, but can you see there's the flute off to the left? Yeah. It's really interesting. Oh, but there's Bible passages where it talks about an angel with 1 foot in the sea and 1 foot on land blowing a trumpet. Well, that's Ophiuchus again. Can you see how Ophiuchus has 1 foot in the Milky Way and 1 foot not on the Milky Way?
Yeah.
So you could use the text as well. I'm just mentioning that for any potential critics out there who are going to say, oh, well, this doesn't prove that the Bible is based on the stars because it's just a bunch of artwork. Well, this is part of an ancient worldwide system. It predates the most ancient Egyptian texts and art. It predates the most ancient Mesopotamian texts and art. It predates the Vedas because the Vedas, which are very ancient, they're talking about gods and goddesses who are based on the stars. They're doing these actions that can be shown to connect up to the stars. So what's it all about? I'll just finish up with, as we kind of had this big long intro and, I'll let you guys ask questions, but I believe that on the individual level, as I was hinting at with the Solomon story, it's talking about reconnecting with higher self. There's these cutting edge psychologists today who are they're talking about psychological trauma as being a separation from self, an alienation from self. and on the societal level, opposing oligarchy, because oligarchy leads towards more alienation, more trauma. Like if a family has to work 3 jobs in order to just pay the rent and the credit card and the student debt and the healthcare or whatever, then is that, how much time is that mom and dad going to have to watch that child when it's a baby? They're going to have to put them in childcare somewhere. And who knows, what kinds of disconnections that child's going to have because they're never with their mom and their dad. The more economic oligarchy you have, the more childhood trauma you're going to have, and the more people are going to be alienated from themselves. And guess what? If you're alienated from yourself, how equipped are you to overthrow oligarchy or oppose oligarchy or put down oligarchs? It's like, let's keep you traumatized, because like a well-connected, grounded, man or woman who's really in touch with who they are is going to say, you know what, this system, this isn't right. This isn't good. What's going on? I don't like that. I don't think anybody else agrees this is good. Hey, let's make some changes around here.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a healthy, connected populace if you're an oligarch. You want to have an unhealthy, disconnected, traumatized populace.
Yeah, who are busy.
So,
the minds are busy. The minds are preoccupied on something else.
Yes, exactly. And so I think we're living through that right now, and we're so busy trying to get back in touch with ourselves. Like, that's important. We got to get back in touch with ourselves. But if that's all we have time to focus on, then the oligarchs are just going to say, well, this is great. Let me turn up the oligarch dial from 10 to 11 now.